I just want to be excited about this game, but every time I start getting my hopes up, the devs trip over themselves yet again. Solar Crown's Season 5 update just dropped, and it is a pretty big one. They're adding a good handful of new features, new content, QoL updates, world changes, graphics and audio fixes, and economy rebalances that on paper are very exciting. I went through all the patch notes the other day on my stream, and by the end of our discussion, I was feeling kind of excited about TDU. But then I did what nobody should ever do if they're excited about a game. I went to the subreddit, and everything was on fire. It seems like HDR has completely broken across all platforms, newer AMD graphics cards are running into a lot of crashing issues, the visual updates are getting mixed reception, Battle Pass or Solar Pass rewards aren't working, and the list goes on. This seems to be a recurring pattern now for Solar Crown and KT Racing. It's often hard to get too excited about new seasons or updates, because in many cases things end up getting delayed or released in a broken or limited state. Ibiza was just one city, the casino released with only one game in it. Season 5 is now being broken up into a few parts and is planned to be a 5-month-long season, pushing back other updates well into 2026. KT Racing's goals and aspirations for Solar Crown are admirable. They've laid out some exciting plans for the future and do seem to be quite well focused on bringing the game more in line with what people loved about TDU 1 and 2, and that's all great, but they need to find a better internal structure for releasing more stable updates. As much of the community has been saying over the past few days, we're all tired of Solar Crown taking 1 step forward and 2 steps back, or 10 steps back, or 3 steps forward and 2 steps back. However many steps are being taken in either direction, we're tired. We just want to enjoy the game and get excited for these updates. And with that said, let's set the subreddit drama aside for a bit and actually check out this first Season 5 update for ourselves. One of the biggest things they're working on for all systems is performance. They're apparently reworking the whole render pipeline and have also been improving visuals and lighting while they're at it. Some of these improvements, especially for consoles, have been dropped in already, but the big performance patch is planned for later into Season 5. That said, unfortunately, the very first thing I noticed when booting up the game on my PC was that performance was noticeably worse for me. I used to run the game at a locked 60 FPS without DLSS and am now experiencing dips below that. This was partly because of the new reflections though, where the high setting now uses dynamic reflections, which are very pretty, but very demanding, like around 20 to 30% of my frame rate. But even with that back down to medium, I'm still down overall about 10-ish% on average. I now need to run DLSS on quality and have reflections at medium to hit a mostly locked 60. Here's hoping that that performance patch later makes a difference. So let's talk about visuals. I don't play with HDR and I have an NVIDIA GPU, so the bugs there luckily don't affect me personally, and I do have to say the new lighting looks overall better to me. It's generally warmer and brighter, feels more saturated with better contrast and way less fog. The bloom feels better, the sky and weather effects look generally better to me. Overall, it gives off a more tropical island vibe that is, in my opinion, much more in line with the visual style of TDU 1 and 2. I did have to turn down my contrast and up my brightness a bit because it felt over contrasted in some areas, but once I did that, I was pretty happy with the new visual style. I think there are some spaces where the old lighting looked better, especially when it comes to lighting and coloring the foliage, and I did seem to notice a few rendering bugs here and there, but overall it feels like a net positive to me, and hopefully it's something they're continuing to work on. I do have to point out though that anti-aliasing seems worse, or maybe I'm just noticing it more now. Ghosting, I think from TAA, feels much more noticeable. It's blurring and adding noise to a lot of foliage and reflections, and when I switched to FXAA, that just didn't work at all. I couldn't get FXAA to activate. So that's really bringing the visual experience down for me. Now on the flip side, one of my favorite things they're working on is updates to the map. They've been going through different regions and changing the world to add detail and more accurately reflect real locations. In a way, this is what I always hoped Horizon's living world would be. Like, I had thought Mexico would look completely different in year 3 than it did on release, but obviously that never happened. So for Solar Crown, it's cool that they're able to permanently change the world and that they're going through the map to give it a sort of extra quality pass. It's kind of like what Flight Sim has done, where they generate the whole world but then go back through specific areas to edit them more by hand and give them more unique and accurate buildings and stuff. Now, if Solar Crown could just throw some people walking around or something to give these areas more life, then I would be really happy, but I know that's a big ask for something that ultimately adds no gameplay. And with that, let's talk about gameplay. There are 2 big new features in Season 5, poker and taxi missions. And I gotta say, I really like the taxi missions. It feels very TDU. The previous games had something along these lines too, and they've done a pretty great job of expanding on it and making it a unique event type. There are 50 different missions that appear somewhat at random around the map, just like the car deliveries, so I'm pretty sure you can redo these if they show up multiple times, and 50 missions is a pretty solid variety. You pick up a passenger, they give you a waypoint, and then you need to get them to their destination on time while following certain restrictions and dealing with some distractions. Different passengers will care more about different things. For example, some will want you to follow all the stoplights, stay in your lane, and keep to the speed limit, while others are a bit more lenient with the law as long as you get them to their destination on time. They'll also ask you to answer questions or do things while you're driving. For example, one client wanted me to roll the windows down, then roll them back up, then roll them down again.
Hey, can I ask you something? Great, thank you. Huh? Thank you very much.
They also ask you questions while driving, and you have to pick the correct answer, otherwise it will lower your review score. And while the clients do have some generic voice lines, these questions aren't spoken out loud, so you have to read the question and all the answers while you're driving. I'm sure this is on purpose to distract you more, like it adds an extra challenge, and I totally get that, but I still do wish the questions were voice acted. Sometimes the generic voice lines don't quite line up either, like I was driving in the opposite lane and my client said,
You should have stopped there, right?
which clearly is more meant for running a stoplight, but that's a minor thing. I also wish you could see the passengers in the open world when you picked them up. As it stands now, you just kind of go to a zone and then activate the mission out of thin air. For immersion's sake, I'd love to actually be able to see a person waving me down or whatever. Overall though, the taxi missions do feel very well fleshed out, and I really like them, to be honest. They're unique and often challenging enough to be really fun to play. There's also a new vehicle mechanic that kinda ties into this, cruise control. Every car now gets access to speed control options, which again are pretty well thought out. You can set a normal cruise control like in a real car and then adjust it in steps up or down through the menu, or set a speed limiter, which can also be adjusted up or down through the menu, and this obviously all ties in quite well to the taxi missions, where some clients want you to obey the speed limit and drive smoothly. Now the other major feature drop for this first part of Season 5 is poker. The casino now has 2 slots games in it and a poker room, or rather 3 rooms. So here's the problem with this. Solar Crown is currently region locked and system locked. They're working on changing that, but it's not expected anytime soon. The game is also not too popular at the moment. Steam player counts outside of new update spikes peak at around 300-ish each day. Now split that up by region, of which there are 8, and that means that at most there's a pool of maybe around 50 to 100 players in my region. Out of those players, how many of them will be playing poker at any given time? As you can see in this footage, not that many. I recorded this a day after the patch released at 3 in the afternoon, right around peak time, and I waited for almost 10 minutes to get a lobby going and never saw another player. Later that night though, I did go back and was able to find a single table with 3 others and played one hand, but then the game soft locked and we all had to quit. To add to this, like I said, there are 3 different rooms, Emerald, Sapphire, and Ruby. Hobby, which have increasingly higher buy-ins and thus potential payouts, so the already small region and system-locked player base gets further broken up into 3 different levels for poker. And I want to be clear, this is a good idea in theory. I like that there's some depth and progression to the poker system, and I know you can still select a lower room if you see players there, but I worry that they're building these features for a player base that sadly doesn't really exist right now. I think it probably would have been smarter to start with just 1 room and then build on that as the player base hopefully grows. The system also desperately needs NPCs to fill at least a few empty seats, because this kinda would solve 2 problems at once. For one, if there aren't any other real players, you could still play. But then the bonus is that it would keep more real players at the tables for longer, so by adding NPCs, you'd actually find real players to play against more often. Hopefully this is something they're thinking about, otherwise poker might just be kinda DOA outside of when a group of friends decide to go in together. Alright, now the last kinda major change they added for Season 5 is the economy rebalance, and this has a lot of good stuff in it. To start, race payouts are higher. The Crown Jewel races, for example, now have much higher rewards and actually seem worth it to replay. Frim has also been completely reworked, and there's no longer a limit to how many times you can cash out per day, which is a very welcome change. They also removed the trick limit, removed the time limit to cash out, updated the leveling system so it goes up to 99 now, and added rep, influence, and solar pass XP as rewards on top of the credits. I think it's also been rebalanced to level up and pay out a bit slower now as a consequence to all this, but that's totally fair to keep it balanced, and the benefits far outweigh any negatives. I feel from my experience that Frim is in a really good spot now. Now, we can also finally sell cars. This is another feature that seems fairly well thought out. It's not just a button to collect 50% of the buy price, there is actually depth to it, because the sale will be affected by how many performance and visual upgrades you've put on the car, what the natural depreciation is for each car, and by how much you've driven it. Of course, with lower miles offering a higher sale price. I like this, I think it's a solid system, and obviously people have been wanting this from the start, so it's nice that they at least put a bit of extra thought into it. Outside of that, for Season 5, there were a ton of bug fixes and minor updates that are worth shouting out. Of course, some new cars got added to the game. They've also started to move away from stickers and have started to add rear wings as customization options, and hey, they look better than Forza Aero, so thumbs up there. There's also a new UI in many areas, which I don't have too many strong opinions on. I do like the new pause menu though. This is definitely an upgrade for me. So at the end of the day, in my own opinion, even though it's very demoralizing to get these updates with some major bugs and shortcomings, overall the game is getting there. They are taking more steps forward than back. Solar Crown is definitely better now than it was back at launch. It's just been a long and bumpy road, and we're absolutely not at the end. For what it's worth, on Steam, the average player base is not only holding steady, but seemingly growing a bit, and that's hopeful. The performance patch needs to knock it out of the park though. If I'm struggling with one of the best PCs you can build, then the average player is certainly hurting more than I am. And of course, console folks are stuck with what they got anyway, so I really hope they can lock that in and get the game feeling smoother. That's really important. The region and system lock fixes also really can't come soon enough. Most online features are ghost towns right now, and that's killing a big chunk of the gameplay that's already in the game. This should be the social MMO racing game, but I barely ever see other players. Every now and then there's a glimpse of it. Last night in the casino, a couple of the guys I played poker with ended up cheering me on while I was playing a slots machine, and that was a really fun, goofy, organic moment that reminded me of my TDU2 casino days. And Solar Crown really needs to capitalize on that and make sure those player interactions are happening more often, because communities keep games alive. They're also starting to drop in more of the monetization they've planned since the beginning, with the Solar Pass, Premium Diamond currency, and online store coming soon. And they need to be very careful with that. If not just postpone it all for now, because what positive sentiment they have is hanging on by a thread. They need to be doing everything they can to earn the player base's trust and goodwill, and adding in more monetization is a quick way to burn that. I'm sure Nacon is breathing down their neck, and of course studios need to make money, and I'm sure we're all a bit shocked they're still working on this, not only now, but like with plans all the way out till the end of next year. So from a studio perspective, I'm sure they want to start bringing in that monetization plan. But I really think Solar Crown is on a razor's edge right now. Like, I'm gonna say it, the game's pretty fun. If you haven't touched it since launch, there is a lot of new stuff to see and do even without the online perspective. But they need to clean up these updates. We can't be having major bugs that should have been caught in QA. Players need reasons to look forward to the future, not worry about it. I'm definitely hopeful for the official racing center and housing coming later, but I want to feel confident that those features can be delivered on. So hey, I'm glad to see them sticking with it. Solar Crown is getting better, and this update did add a lot of good things, but they still have a ways to go. Thanks for watching, and let me know how you guys are feeling about this update, and I'll see you in the next video.